Bobby Lee Claremont and the Criminal Element by Jeannie Mobley. Half an hour from Memphis, Tennessee, 4:30 p.m. I gave Malcolm plenty of time to get away from the smoking lounge before venturing out myself. I hadn't learned who was at the party thanks to having fallen once again like a lovesick ninny into Nanette's story. But I did know for sure now that Jimmy O'Halloran had been murdered, and that whoever Kelly was, he was someone to be feared, even by the likes of the gigantic, knuckle-cracking Malcolm Sloan. Did Nanette know he was dangerous? Did she know her husband had been murdered? Was she in danger too? If so, the sooner I found out what had happened to Jimmy and why, the sooner I could protect her. I was eager to meet up with Terrence and Leon to see what they'd learned, in the hopes we could put it all together and solve the mystery. But I didn't want to go rushing off calling attention to myself or to the fact I'd met with Malcolm. So I sat in the plushy velvet chair in the smoking lounge and watched the Mississippi Delta roll by in the afternoon sun. Mile after mile of newly sprouted cotton seedlings spread their broad leaves to the sun. Here and there, families of sharecroppers worked the fields, kids pulling weeds while their parents hoed the rows. Mothers, their faces hidden in floppy sunbonnets, worked beside their husbands, their babies strapped to their backs. Whole families, blacks and whites alike, scraping along for an honest living under the blistering sun. I ran my hands over the velvet of the upholstery, enjoying its luxury all the more. I'd have a chair like this in every room of my mansion when I made it rich in Chicago. I spent a half hour in comfort before I set out toward the front of the train in search of Terrence and Leon. Instead, halfway through the dining car, I came across Alphonse Bugeaud. He was sitting with Malcolm at a table eating pie and drinking coffee. He called my name and waved me toward an empty seat at his table. I glanced at Malcolm. His face was completely expressionless, giving away nothing of our conversation. He was back on the clock, on Bugeaud's payroll. Bugeaud smiled and fingered his ruby-studded watch chain as I took the seat. I thought about what Malcolm had said about Bugeaud being better at spending money than making it. That watch chain was worth a pretty penny. So were the rings on the plump, sausagey fingers that fidgeted with it. "I think you know why I want to talk to you, don't you, boy?" Bugeaud said after we'd eyed each other for a moment. "Not entirely, sir," I said, hoping that if I played dumb I might get answers out of him that I hadn't gotten out of Malcolm. He smiled. "You like Nanette, don't you? You want to see her and her baby taken care of?" "Course I do." "Then you'd want to side with me, not go ratting to that cop, right, kid?" I glanced at Malcolm. His eyes were focused off in the distance, his face expressionless. I turned back to Bugeaud. "Well, now," I said, "I can't promise to side with you when I don't rightly know what your side is." "My side is, I'm trying to take care of Nanette. I'm trying to take care of my business. I don't need a meddling cop interfering with that." "Seems to me your business should take care of Nanette. As Jimmy's widow, I reckon she's your partner in his place now." I watched him closely to see what his expression might give away, but he was too interested in his plate of pie for much else to register in his eyes. "Like I said before, kid, she's got other resources, if everything works out according to plan. To that end, I'm offering you $100 when we get to Chicago if you tell Hayworth what I tell you to tell him." "I believe the deal was $200. If I'm going to get involved, you're going to have to make it worth my while," I said, mimicking Kelly's chilly calm. Bugeaud slammed his fist on the table, making the china cups rattle against their saucers. The waiter scurried over. "Is everything all right, sir?" he asked. Bugeaud relaxed his fist and waved the waiter away. "Okay, kid, 200, he said when we were alone again. "But for 200 you'll do and say exactly what I tell you, n'est-ce pas? You work for me now. If anyone asks, Nanette and Jimmy married and had a baby, and Jimmy's death was a tragic accident." This was what I wanted to hear. $200, and who knew what else when I figured out what had really happened. I might have a ruby watch chain and rings and plump fingers of my own. Or better yet, a pinstripe suit and cool confidence like Kelly. With $200, I could take my time finding my way into the Chicago crime rackets. Of course, if I impressed Kelly before I got to Chicago, I'd already have my in and could go straight for the rubies. I glanced again at Malcolm. He was still mostly expressionless, but I could see his jaw was clenched. Poor Malcolm. He'd taken the trouble of warning me, thinking I was an innocent kid. He was undoubtedly disappointed to discover the depths of my criminal soul. I looked back at Bugeaud, meeting his glare without flinching. "How do I know you'll pay me when we get to Chicago?" I asked. "Under the circumstances, you are going to have to trust me, kid." I shook my head. "I need to see some money on the barrelhead." I expected Bugeaud to slam his fist on the table again, but instead he gave me a crafty smile. "Shucks ye ingrate persono, eh, kid?" he said, which meant, "Every dog scratches for his bone." I shrugged, still meeting his gaze. "Shucks ye en else coen," I replied. "Every dog has to carry his own hide." Bugeaud laughed and reached into the inside breast pocket of his suit. He pulled out a roll of bills and peeled off $20. "I think we'll make fine business partners, Mr. Claremont," he said, holding the money out to me. "The remainder will be paid when we get to Chicago. Don't disappoint me." I took the money. All I know is that Annette and Jimmy married and had a baby, and Jimmy's death was a tragic accident. I got to my feet and tucked the $20 into my pocket. "A pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Bugeaud." I turned then to walk away, but as I did, I saw Malcolm's silent lips turn down into a tight, disapproving frown.